right, we're live.
Awesome.
Hello and welcome everyone to another edition of Live on IFT. My name is Ben. I'll be your host. Joining me as always, your other host, my colleague and best friend, Tripp Stanford.
What's up, everyone? Nice to see you again.
Tripp asked me to remind everyone that college students with a university email in the US, UK, and Canada can now access IFT Pro Plus with a 90% discount. That's right. We are giving this stuff away for free for students.
Almost. Yeah, 90%. Yeah, 90% is a lot. But it's really cool if you just sign up with your .edu email and you're in the US, Canada, or the UK, it just automatically works for you. So if you're a student, go try it out and start automating your schoolwork.
Awesome. Yeah, so we have as you might have noticed, we have a special guest with us today. So ladies, gentlemen, automation fans of all ages, the founder and CEO of IFT, Linden Tibbets.
Hello. Wonderful intro, Ben.
Awesome. Yeah. Linden, we have a lot of questions for you today, and we're also going to be pausing in between and throughout to take questions from the audience. So if you're with us today live, get your questions in for Linden, and we're going to get to as many of those as possible. To kick things off, Linden, can you start just by telling us all a little bit about yourself, where you're from, where you went to school, and maybe your career prior to IFT?
Sure. So originally from a small suburb just south of Dallas called Duncanville, Texas. Wonderful little suburb. Couldn't have picked a kind of more idyllic place to grow up. I used to describe Duncanville for those, and this will maybe age me a little bit, have seen like Friday Night Lights. It was kind of like that. Football was a big deal, that kind of thing. We had a very diverse student body, which was, sometimes you think Texas, you don't think diversity, but it's actually quite different than actually even the West Coast in some ways. We sports was a big deal. I was obsessed with this idea of being a 3D animator. This was, went to high school around the time that Pixar blew up, Toy Story, Bugs Life, that kind of thing. We actually had a like 3D animation class or kind of track at the high school, which was really cool. And that was one of the reasons that kind of drove me to start the California dream. I kind of felt that Pixar was out here in the Bay Area. Any of the things happening with animation, video games, closely related, the close cousin to kind of 3D animation, and so really from probably sophomore year in high school, had this dream of going to college out in California, and lo and behold, I was also born quite tall. Some would say freakishly tall. I found it's one of the one body traits that it's actually really easy to kind of make comments on or make fun of, because everybody I've met always wants to be taller or wants to like trade some inches. But I was able to use some of that height, I think, I'd say, to actually fool some people into thinking I'd be good at basketball. So once I'm 6'9", so once you get a certain height, people are like, you should play basketball. And that was really what got my foot in the door with an opportunity to kind of go to school somewhere outside of Texas. I went to school at a place called Santa Clara down in San Jose. So it was like right next to, I remember on the visit, it was right next to the NVIDIA kind of like corporate headquarters and campus. And, NVIDIA, even today, it's a huge deal. A lot of AI and the kind of the graphics card industry has kind of moved into AI. But 3D animation, it's about 30-minute drive from Pixar, 5-minute drive to NVIDIA. I was like, I should go to school here. So was lucky enough to go there on a basketball scholarship, and then had the dean of the computer engineering program told me there was no way in hell that I was going to graduate as a computer engineer and play basketball, which he was actually right. He was right, but I did graduate as a computer engineer, but actually stopped playing basketball about partway through my senior year. So didn't quite make it the full 4 years playing basketball. From there, just continued the dream. Was kind of hit this patch of really, I would say, luck. Was trying to work in video games after school, was just applying all over the place. I was lucky enough to actually get in at a place called Maxis, which is, if you don't know video games like SimCity, The Sims, we had this fellow named Will Wright, which was kind of the leader, the person that started Maxis. And so, yeah, my first job out of school was actually living the original dream, or at least close enough to it. Worked on The Sims 2, and was just so passionate that I kind of looked the other way when they were asking me to work video game 12-hour night shifts. This was kind of back before the video game industry kind of blew up on the scene as not necessarily slave labor. A lot of people are well, but close to it. Because people are so passionate about what they're doing there, they sometimes take quite a bit of advantage of the people that work on the games. Also learned how to work hard. And then from there, I worked a couple jobs in security, did some biometric stuff like fingerprints, iris scanners, not quite as fun as video games or 3D animation. And really that was, I think, a good forcing function for me to say, well, if I was going to get back to games or get back to something I really loved, I better figure out how to kind of carve that path for myself, not really just apply to jobs and wait and hope and fingers crossed that someone was going to hire me. So from there, got my foot in the door at a design firm called IDEO. I did a lot of kind of self-initiated projects, kind of built up a resume of stuff, kind of desperately wanted to be a designer. As a computer engineer, I could make things, and things at that time were websites, tools of that nature. So I was hired as a computer engineer at IDEO, one of the handful of folks there. And then over the course of 3 years, kind of pushed my way into doing design work. And then through that journey, bumped into a lot of the early inspiration for IFT. So that's the journey. And I've been working on IFT. I used to say I've been rounding up to 10 years for a couple of years, and now I'm rounding down to 10 years. That'd be 12, 13 years. Somewhere in there, I'm going to have to start rounding up to 20. But I work on IFT the rest of my life if I could, and that's what it takes. I'm still really passionate about what we do, and thankful for the team is just as passionate or very darn close.
So you actually segued me perfectly into my next question. So you're at IDEO. You started getting some inspiration for what became IFT. So tell us a little bit about that moment where you said to yourself, I need to start a automation integration platform and connect every API on the internet. Tell us about that moment and kind of what led you to that?
Yeah, I think one of the key words that was still relevant at the time was APIs. APIs was, you could say it's been around since the beginning of programming. But I think what API started to represent back then, this 2008, 2009, was really a way to kind of reach in and get all the value or utility out of some tool in a way that a designer didn't have to dictate through the interface. And I thought that was just so darn cool. I like to say IFT was started during the golden age of APIs, where a lot of the consumer internet services, Twitter, Flickr, Foursquare, basically had these incredibly open APIs, completely free, and we're kind of just letting the proverbial 1,000 flowers bloom. And I think learning a lot of things along the way that eventually kind of pushed a lot of those companies to either close down those APIs or charge for those APIs, which I think long-term is a step in the right direction. Although, somewhere in the middle, it makes it a little bit more difficult for anybody looking to achieve something different with those tools. But ultimately, this idea of the API was just so fascinating. And also this idea, especially of these consumer internet services that became more and more specific. I think two of them that really stick out in my mind are Instagram and Dropbox. Especially when they launch, and anything once it has some success kind of expands. Just it's like a law of nature. They start to do more and more things. But when Instagram originally launched, it was just photo sharing, and when Dropbox originally launched, it was just kind of like file sharing, file storage in the cloud. And those were just the names themselves the icons, like the logos, kind of represented this very discrete piece of functionality. And it could be kind of understandable by someone that wasn't a programmer. And it was that understanding, almost in the same way that someone might look at a pencil and understand what you can do with a pencil, right? Like there's no big mysteries on how a pencil works. Eraser, you write with the other end. You could begin to then use those tools outside of the range of what they were originally designed for. And that some of that inspiration was actually kind of brought by, there's a woman at IDEO named Jane Fulton Surrey. And she actually had this little book, kind of a picture book called Thoughtless Acts. And it was exactly this idea of creative reuse, people being wildly creative, inventive even, with everyday objects. And so back to that idea of the pencil, you could write with a pencil, you could erase with a pencil, but also if you had long hair, you could use a pencil to hold your hair up in a ponytail. And the original designer or whoever made that pencil isn't thinking about that use case at all, but because the person using the pencil kind of completely understands it and has access effectively, if you kind of squint a little bit, you say that user has access to the APIs. All the functionality of the pencil is exposed in a way that allows for creative reuse and repurposing. And that example of the pencil is very mundane, but once you start to see how people use stuff in the physical world, you can't help but see these, kind of quote unquote thoughtless acts everywhere you look. And I was struck by the similarity of that creativity that was being expressed by everyone in the physical world. What I was doing with APIs and programming, right?
Yeah.
Except the APIs and programming was in this digital world. And there was also essentially a gate. There was a barrier to entry. Not only did you have to kind of have access to APIs, or those APIs had to be made available, you also had to be a programmer, an engineer. And that felt wrong. It felt wrong that people weren't able to be as creative or be as resourceful when things went digital. It was also really clear to me, even back in 2008, 2009, that everything was going to be an internet service, not just every physical thing, but every service, every brand. And, I think that's slowly become true to the point 4 or 5 years ago, where this idea that everything was going to be an internet service was no longer a rallying cry. People would just nod and say, duh.
Yeah.
But it's come true. And it's, I think, one of the things that we've made a bet on, that over time, there's only going to be more internet services, and thus the need for people to have some creative way to reuse or creative way to automate or get something more out of those services or get them to work together will only increase over time.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the services on IFT. So it's been a 13-year journey for you, and there are now 900 services on IFT. And when I first started at IFT, the tagline or the slogan was "Everything works better together." IFT became obviously quite popular in the IoT and smart home industry. But recently, IFT has added a bunch of business tools, AI tools, podcast, even e-commerce platforms. Linden, is IFT still everything for everyone? Who is our customer? Who is IFT for, basically?
Yeah, I think for right or wrong, I think there's still an aspiration at IFT to be if this then that for everything and everyone. I think in reality, and as we've kind of learned over more than a decade now, it's very hard to start with building something for everyone. And I think up until the last few years, I think we had largely gone where the current hype cycle drew us, right? Like we launched IFT in that golden age of APIs, really much kind of built that around consumer internet services. I mentioned a bunch of them: Instagram, Foursquare, Flickr, Twitter, so on and so forth. And then the Internet of Things started to become a thing, and so that that just easily plugged in, and it was actually one of the ways to create, I think, really interesting use cases in the very early days of connected devices. And then voice assistants happened. Somewhere in there was mobile. We forgot about that. So we've kind of ridden this hype cycle. But really, I think it was more of us being kind of drawn to those hype cycles rather than us being really picky and choosy, not just about where the hype was, but who we wanted to help and in what order. And I think what's happened now, especially as we've shifted to a very different business model, Pro is really, it's 3.5 years old, 4 years old now. And it's been, I think, wildly successful relative to the business that we had originally started. And it feels so much better to build something and think all day about the person that is also the customer. The business before was charging the services and essentially giving IFT away for free to the end user. And Pro is now the end user as a customer. And I think as we've gotten that clarity where, the people we think about in terms of making product decisions are also the people that we want to create enough value for and convince to pay for IFT, has also allowed us to think, okay, well, who should we build it for and in what order? How do we start by getting more focused? And I think one of the groups of people that we saw both using IFT and also got a lot of excitement around in terms of helping them grow a business over time and helping them kind of evolve is what we call internally enterprise of one. So it's small groups or individuals that are building a business or a side business online, purely digital. And you could think of these folks as people running YouTube channels, people running Etsy stores, people selling things on Shopify. So there's just so many people, starting a podcast. And there's so many different ways for this creator economy to kind of express itself. It really still feels kind of like the early days. It's even though some of these tools have been around for almost a decade now, I still think this idea that anyone can start a business online with just a computer is still so revolutionary relative to how businesses used to work, that there's just this opportunity to kind of rise, the rising tides, rise all boats kind of thing. And so those are the people that we really aspire to build it for and to make IFT as valuable as possible for in this short term. And that doesn't mean that IFT isn't also incredibly useful for people using or building kind of out their smart home, or for people doing something that's, kind of a pure consumer, pure personal use case. As much as we make decisions internally, we're really trying to help those very small businesses build their business, and even more specifically, help those small businesses build their community. That's really the problem I think we've identified that we want to help solve first. One of the hardest things, and really one of the kind of key ingredients to being successful with a very small online business, is the people that you surround yourself with, the community that really kind of supports what you're doing and who you are, not only in the early days, but also as you become massively successful. And if you can get that right, the business part of it, actually generating revenue, being able to quit your day job and do your side hustle or do the thing that you're most passionate about, becomes so much easier. So if we can help people solve that, we think we can help a lot more people be successful with their kind of new personal or new online business.
Awesome. Yeah, I know, Tripp, you've got some more questions about community building and AI and some other fun topics. Can we take a break real quick, Tripp, before we get to those, and just take a few questions from the audience if we have any?
Yeah, so we have a few that are coming in right now. This one, and Linden, you're going to be able to see these. I'm going to throw them on the stream. So this one, I'm assuming it's let me see if I can remove this. From Nick off of LinkedIn. Do you miss using Lightwave?
Hello, Nick.
Yeah.
Nick is one of my old best buddies. I don't know if I should call him out this or not. We stacked the live stream with all old friends. Yeah, nice. Nick, I think Nick was in my class, Mr. Laundry, Lightwave 3D. Nick Fuller there. Hope you and family are well. Yes, I do miss using it. That's awesome. It was such a weird. I've never met a single soul, at least of our generation. I don't want to say how old me and Nick are, but yeah, we're old now. I've never met anyone of our generation that had a similar program in high school. It was
Interesting.
So
cool.
Oh man, Nick, so good to see you, sir. Hope all is well.
Yeah, thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Nick. So we've got a bunch here too. Our friend Jim is in the chat on YouTube, and he's got multiple questions on here. They're all kind of in the same stream. So let me just kind of start throwing these up there. So where is this? Question regarding grouping applets. During a live stream 2 or 3 years ago, Linden said a method of grouping applets together was on the way. Is there any progress on this?
Yeah, and I think we were working on some different ways to kind of put applets together, group them together. And one of the things we found was that as you group those applets or even kind of connected them, almost kind of created this like string of, if one thing happened, then do something else, and then tying that to another applet, it became really easy to create a scenario in which it was hard to like debug or find, where a problem was or where something broke down. And we decided we wanted to actually switch gears and kind of invest in making a singular applet more and more powerful over time, so that you could essentially bring all of the functionality of multiple applets into one singular applet. And I think one of the biggest blocking kind of features that we still need to add to, I think, do that is the ability to have multiple triggers. Like right now with Pro, and so all these things are either Pro or Pro Plus, depending on what the feature is. But you can have multiple queries, you can have multiple actions, but you can still only have a singular trigger. You can just have one if. And I think that's one of the reasons where I think applets still end up being very isolated in what they can do. That said, we're looking actually right now at kind of revisiting some of those old ideas and designs for grouping applets together by building really actions mostly, but looking at triggers and queries as well, that allow you to make much more kind of raw API calls to individual services. And this was something our product leader, Rob, actually just pinged me on yesterday as something that was really exciting, and something we hadn't actually talked about internally for a couple of years. And so it's something we're going to revisit. So you might be able to do what I think you're looking for in terms of grouping applets by being able to connect them through some of those raw API calls. But it's one of those things, and I'm sorry if it was something. Hopefully, I didn't promise it as much as it felt like we were making good progress on it at the time. But we really stepped back and looked at it. It just became, it was less manageable in kind of forcing everything to be consolidated within one applet. To kind of create this group of applets, it didn't seem to make things easier to use, and that's been one of the kind of guiding principles for IFT over time is how do we build something that allows a really broad set of folks to do something, namely programming, that without any kind of technical background or without being an engineer. And so sometimes we end up making decisions that limit some of that, kind of creative expressiveness or some of the complexity in the name of simplicity. And now that we have Pro and Pro Plus, it's actually been helpful in that we can kind of justify doing things that are more complex, are more powerful for the folks that are willing to be customers and that are kind of are willing to expose themselves to some of that complexity. So I think, Jim would love to understand, maybe send some more info to Ben and Tripp about exactly what you're trying to accomplish, and even like what are the specific applets that you'd love to see in a group and why. And that might be helpful. Send it over to our product team and our product leader and see if we can't find a way to get what you're after.
Yeah, Jim, you've got our email. It's marketing@IFT. Feel free to just email us after this. And yeah, we'll send it over to Rob directly. But thank you so much for that question. Killer. So we've got a couple more questions here, but we might leave them just for a little bit later. We've got a couple other slots in this live stream for live questions. But keep throwing them in the chat, and I'll start kind of pulling them as we're kind of moving forward. But I have a question. So this past year was this like wild time for AI. Everybody released AI products. So did IFT. We've actually got 4 suite AI services on IFT and a cool ChatGPT tool that we haven't released yet, and we're releasing next week. So be on the lookout for that. But what do you think the purpose of AI is in tomorrow's workplace?
That's a big question.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, honestly, I think everybody has an opinion on it. I think we're still very much figuring it out. I think one of the things that's been exciting to me regarding AI and IFT is that I think what AI represents is kind of that next frontier of complexity. Essentially the next opportunity to create a scenario where there's a bunch of haves and have-nots. If APIs created that wall where if you were technical enough, you could get more out of the services than if you were non-technical. AI kind of feels the same way. I think that complexity is multifaceted. And so it's one of those, big technology shifts that requires simplicity. It requires essentially design. It requires people thinking about how other people use a product. And I think one of the things that's been so exciting about ChatGPT is that kind of chat-based interface seems to be close enough or crosses some kind of uncanny valley that it kind of unlocks this potential for just about anyone. If you can write a question, you can use ChatGPT. But I think to really be able to use it well, and especially where I think AI has the most potential is when you start to kind of turn it loose, and maybe that's the wrong phrase, but when you start to give it access to things that are much more personable, things that are much more about you and your world than about, what's, indexable via, a search engine, what's publicly available, your data, your location data, where you parked your car, your finances, you can kind of go on this list of all the things that really kind of make up your digital life and identity. And I think AI has the potential to extract so much more value for individuals from that data. And especially when you think about that data as it relates to the businesses that those individuals are creating. I think one of the things about the creator economy, or what we call enterprise of one internally here at IF, is that there's this very blurred line between what's consumer and what's business, or what's personal and what's someone's online persona that they're trying to build a community around and trying to start a business around. And I think AI has the potential to help people, I think, kind of further blur those lines, which sounds a little scary, but also essentially be more of themselves online, allow them to free up time, allow them to tell different types of stories, allow them to create different types of content without having to do lots and lots of work. And I think the thing that everybody has to keep in mind is, how do we make sure that anything we do with AI is easy enough to understand and thus control by the people using it, right? Like, I think the ship has sailed on being able to say, kind of reverse engineer, how did I get to that answer?
Yeah.
But I don't think it's sailed yet on how you dole out access. And access is one of those things that is very, kind of real time. It changes over time. Yes, you could, somebody could download all of your, let's say, Instagram data or all your private messages from Instagram. And you can do that once, and that's still not good if you don't want them to have that. But over time, you're going to continue to message people on Instagram. And so that data is always changing, always evolving. And so I think this idea of being able to control what an AI can access and be able to essentially flip a switch, yes or no. And it's one of the things that applets are kind of just switches for access, what services can send data where. And so I think there's something, especially for IFT, alongside these kind of consumer grade or individual grade APIs and the interfaces like ChatGPT built on top of them, to make that ability to turn on and off access, to get more or to get less out of these different AI models. So it's one of the things we're looking at really closely internally, and also finding all kinds of really interesting ways to bring AI to the product itself. I'm not sure how much we're able to say about some new products, but I think even creating an applet from a similar interface like ChatGPT, essentially typing in plain text. If someone rings my doorbell, then add them to a spreadsheet, and then that applet being created for you. It kind of feels a little magical when you do it. So I think we've got some really exciting stuff in progress around AI and IFT in the future.
Killer. That would be awesome. So as you kind of mentioned, the creator economy, and that's kind of who we're seeing is joining IFT. A lot of YouTubers, Twitch streamers, LinkedIn personalities, Twitter personalities. As they're joining IFT and kind of automating, like building their community, what do you think the creator economy is going to look like next year?
I think it only gets bigger. It's one of those things, just like kind of making a bet in the early days that the number and the diversity and variety of internet services was only going to expand over time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you can say the same thing about not only the number of people that are finding new ways to make, either a little bit of money or a lot of money around their own kind of individual brand or their own personality online. But I think you're also going to find even more diverse ways for people to build those businesses. So, even internally, we talk a lot about even things like OnlyFans. Like, to me, like that creates just a whole new avenue. And, there's all kinds of things you can argue about, different morals around that. But in a way, it's just another example, another way in which someone can take themselves and find some way to have the control to generate revenue around that, building your brand on YouTube. Not only can you build really a kind of a sustainable personal business just around what you say and how you show up on video, it also seems to be this prerequisite for whatever other business you're building. So if you're selling artisanal soap, something that someone said the other day, if you're selling artisanal soap, I think the degree of success you're going to have selling that soap is going to come down to the same types of activities that someone in the creator economy is taking on, building a personal brand, building a community around the thing they're passionate about. And so I think the creator economy, in a way, I think at some point expands out to encompass what we now just consider the economy, and how that's going to work and how those two things kind of collide and work together, I think will be really interesting. But I mean, if you look at, even massive brands like Nike, right? They're desperately looking to do a lot of the same things that one person, in their bedroom is doing online on Instagram. Like they're looking to kind of tap into those influencers, quote unquote. And I think they found that that's one of the ways in which they can become more authentic. Now, I think there's a lot of murkiness there, and there's a lot of problems that I think will be, solved with time and with people kind of learning to kind of parse out, okay, who's authentic and who's not. But in a way, I think the creator economy is this like groundswell of change that will ultimately touch all of the major businesses, especially businesses that are kind of building something around a consumer product, trying to sell something to a broad group of people at once. And I think the evidence is in they're desperately looking, take their marketing team that's doing kind of tried and true marketing things, figuring out how they can tap into this creator economy to be just as authentic as the person selling artisanal soap.
Yep. That's awesome. So as we were kind of running low on time, I'm going to transition back to the just answer questions from the community. One of them was actually our next question. It's from Megan. What is your favorite applet?
Yeah, I would say my favorite applet has been pretty locked in place over the years. It was probably something that I turned on in the very first year or two of IFT. It actually, I think it's, back to one of the questions from Jim about grouping applets. I think it's actually two applets. So it's one of those things that kind of work in tandem, but doesn't have this direct connection. So what those two applets do, one of them takes all of the posts that I like in a service called Feedly. So I'm a customer of Feedly, and I, again, dating myself here, I still find it really, really interesting to subscribe to RSS feeds. And I don't even think they say the word RSS or Atom anymore, but in particular feeds that have like very visual things, so I'm a very kind of visual person. I could look at, cool images or cool art, all day, every day. And so I think I have probably have 200 different feeds that I subscribe to. as I just kind of scroll through, it's like one of those things, probably how a lot of people use Instagram today. If I like one of those things, it takes the picture of what, whatever that main piece of imagery is, and that saves it to Dropbox. And then the second applet, what it does is it essentially organizes those as they come into Dropbox into different folders. And those folders are then essentially what drive my screensaver. So essentially all the things I like through Feedly are driven by or show up on my screensaver when my computer goes to sleep.
That's honestly pretty sweet.
There's a couple other applets around that that I think I'll add to it, but one of them is being able to kind of very quickly add a feed into Feedly as I'm browsing online, different things like that. I think there's a note widget that allows me to do that sometimes. But that idea of taking all the things I like online, or at least on Feedly, and putting them on my Dropbox and then my desktop to drive my screensaver. I see it every day and love it.
Killer. That's awesome. So Sailor Mikey, he's been pretty active in the chat. So are there plans on Twitter apps? The other competitors only let you sign up a developer account, and if these the only service that doesn't require that. I'm not exactly sure on that question. Twitter is still a service on IFT.
Yeah, I think I know what Mikey is getting at. But yeah, I think Twitter, or X, service formerly known as Twitter, made a decision about a year ago, less than a year ago, to charge $42,000 a month for access to APIs that were previously free. And I think part of that decision, the number 42 or 420, not sure where that came from. But, I think some of those decisions were made, obviously in a very top-down way by a very strong personality. And I think were made, from my perspective, there was a good reason behind that. They felt that, Twitter and all the data and all the stuff on Twitter was being taken advantage of by companies using those APIs. And unfortunately, anybody using those APIs, whether they're scraping that data or creating bot farms and all the kind of various things you could do with the API, kind of get lumped together with services like IFT that are using that API in a way that we believe is really about empowering people. And we've done a lot to combat any kind of use of IFT as a bot tool. It's been one of the things really from the first couple of years that has been top of mind for us. We don't want IFT to be abused in a way in which the companies that are providing those APIs don't like what we're doing. And so unfortunately, I think the reason a lot of those other companies or other startups only offer Twitter to the developer accounts are because they can't afford to pay that ridiculous, $42,000, some number drawn out of a hat in Elon's brain each month to allow people to use Twitter in that way. So I think it's probably the wrong decision. There's probably a lot of ways in which they could have kind of fought some of those bad use cases without making it more difficult for all the other people that want to use Twitter in, I think, unique and cool ways. Or frankly, Twitter, back to this idea of building a community and building a business, Twitter is still such a massive platform for people expressing themselves, people building communities, and not to be able to use some of the APIs around that to do that even better is a real shame. So we've been able to essentially continue to offer Twitter by making it part of Pro, and I think eventually maybe making it part of Pro Plus. But it's still one of the things where even for us, we look at it each month and say, that just doesn't really make sense for our business. And so my sense, I want to always work with Twitter/X, but I think they're making it really hard for both their users and other businesses to work with them. And I also think just some of the things that happen top down, and I still kind of live in this Silicon Valley bubble, so kind of still have an opinion about who Elon is and the things he says. But my sense is that the vast majority of people that use Twitter could kind of care less, and they're there for the other people that are there. And I think it's a real shame where it's gone. And my hope is that maybe there's some rock bottom that gets hit and it turns around and goes back the other way, because it was one of those things that I was on and checked every day, if not every hour. And there's something about it that has caused me to rethink that, just as an individual on Twitter. So yeah, it's a shame, but I'm a optimist by default, I think. And I think there's still enough momentum from what Twitter was and what it could still be to allow it to kind of turn around and rethink some of those decisions.
Cool. Well, so we're going to have some time to answer the last couple questions after this next round. But just for time, we kind of wanted to move on to the next section of this live stream.
Yeah, absolutely. So Linden, this is a new rapid fire segment that we're going to try out with you today. So you're our guinea pig for this segment. We're in the holiday season. So this segment is called Give Me Some or No Thank You. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you a rapid fire, a bunch of activities or verbs, nouns that are related to the holiday season. And if it's something that you like, you say, give me some. And if it's something that you'd rather not take part in, you say, no, thank you. Now, it sounds like there's only 2 options, but there's actually maybe more like 4. So something you really like, you say, oh, give me some. And then if it's like, something that you're like, okay, well, give me some. Okay. Or it could be no, thank you. Or it could be absolutely not, no, thank you. So,
sounds like there's more than 4. That sounds like there's infinite options.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We just want to get some personality out of you.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So, are you ready? Are you ready for the rapid fire? Give me some. No, thank you.
Give me some.
Awesome.
Am I doing it right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Okay. First one, building a snowman.
Give me some. This is number one request for my daughter, Linux. She's 4 years old, and she says it's Christmas time, and when are we going to build a snowman?
Awesome.
So
nice.
We don't have a whole lot of snow here in San Francisco, so we're going to have to travel abroad to build that snowman.
Awesome. How about sledding?
Give me a little bit, but in small amounts, and just me for now, not Linux. I think I've seen some pretty gnarly sledding accidents in my day.
All right, snowball fights.
Give me a little bit. Give me a little bit. Very easy. Very easy to get out of hand into real violence.
Certainly,
you can really hurt someone with a snowball.
Yeah.
So.
All right, I'm going to shift to holiday delicacies. So first one is hot chocolate.
Give me so much. Pour it on my head. Bathe in it.
All right.
Good marshmallows.
Let's go.
Okay. All right. How about candy canes?
Ugh, no. Throw them out the window.
Okay.
Those are terrible. It's second only to the fruit cake.
Okay. How about so for adults only, eggnog.
Oh, actually, give me some, but no alcohol.
No alcohol.
Ah.
All right.
I only like the non-alcoholic eggnog.
Nice.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. I hear this in a song every time this year. Figgy pudding.
I don't even know what this is.
That sounds like fruitcake. No.
So, no, thank you. All right. This is a family activity, maybe going to see the Nutcracker.
No, thank you. No, thank you.
Okay.
We'll watch the Nutcracker. But
okay.
Yeah, I think
the one on Disney Plus
if
isn't
we're
bad.
going to go to the ballet, there's got to be something better than the Nutcracker.
Okay. wearing matching pajamas with your family for your family photo.
No, thank you, because somebody actually, we'll keep names and places anonymous, to protect the innocent. But every year, I actually get a couple different sets of PJs or sweats that are family coordinated. And the funny thing is, being 6'9", they never fit me. So first things that gets thrown out after I wear them on
Christmas
Day.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. How about Mariah Carey's Christmas album?
I only like Mariah Carey live and in person on New Year's Eve. when
Okay.
she definitely doesn't drink the non-alcoholic eggnog.
Nice.
Okay. All right. How about Michael Bublé's Christmas album?
It's Bublé.
Ooh.
Bublé's.
Is he a saxophonist? It's not Kenny G. I don't even know
He's
that
like
name.
a croonie.
Oh,
like
you
a,
would
like
know
a
Michael
Frank
Bublé.
Sinatra type croonie, you know.
Yeah, the modern Frank Sinatra. Yeah.
Okay, you
Oh,
just
okay.
offended everyone in Canada, but that's
This is
okay.
awkward.
Yeah.
All right, so these are gifts. So Christmas morning, you go downstairs, you have a pair of Jordan 1s high tops under the Christmas tree.
Give me some. Although I'll get in trouble because I have too many Jordan 1s. And so
Nice.
they better be looking over my shoulder when I'm using the GOAT app, looking at Jordan 1s so they know exactly which one I want.
All right, how about Adidas high tops under the Christmas tree?
No, thank you. Although I'm not a hater on Adidas, but you know, they've got some similar, they made some similar bad decisions like Twitter here over the last couple of years. And
Gotcha.
they're just, I don't know. I think Nike on the whole makes better decisions, although they're
Okay.
not perfect either. So I'm all Nike all the time.
All right, so this is something that I used to get every year for Christmas. How about socks as a present for Christmas?
Also, similarly, I have large feet. Very rarely can someone guess my sock size. Most socks actually they size out at about 12.
Oh no!
15. So again, it's, if you want to see me wear them on Christmas Day, give them to me, but you'll never see them again.
All right, how about Christmas carolers at your front door?
Actually, give me some. It's been quite a while since I've had the Christmas carolers, and I remember back home in Texas, we always had a couple different groups of families that would come by.
That's awesome.
And they never came at the right time. It was almost
no, of course not.
Dinner or lunch. It was like one of them was one of my mom's best friends. It's like, couldn't you coordinate?
Yeah.
Like, hey, we're thinking about coming over today at 3. What are y'all doing? It was always just like the absolute worst time. But there was something really kind of magical about it, even though it was also very awkward.
Yeah. Okay. What about ugly Christmas sweaters?
Yeah, give me some. Give me some.
Right.
We, daughter Lennox had an ugly Christmas sweater day, and you know I'm biased, but I think she had the ugliest / coolest Christmas sweater.
Nice.
That's actually a good one, and you know they make those in all sizes. For some reason, the PJs also are. You know, I guess they have to kind of work towards the averages, but they don't make super extra large PJs. At least,
right.
Okay,
so you mentioned you're from Texas. You're from just outside of Dallas. Christmas Day, Dallas Mavericks versus Phoenix Suns on Christmas Day.
Dallas Mavs. Although, oh man, I'm gonna say no, thank you. I've been such a huge basketball fan and a Warriors fan, NBA specifically, but you know, Warriors. I'm a local Bay Area native now, and I've been so sad because the Warriors haven't been good this year, and it feels kind of like, you know, that it's no longer writing on the wall. It is probably officially the end of what we consider the Warriors dynasty.
Don't say that. They could
get controversial opinion perhaps, but it's hard, even though I'm an eternal optimist.
Yeah, we'll continue this discussion.
Yeah. I'm still watching the game, but it's there's a little tear in my eye every time.
All right, so we're gonna switch to some Christmas movies. First one is Will Ferrell's The Elf.
Actually, just saw it for the first time like 2 months ago. I don't know how the hell we decided to watch it.
It's a classic. It's a modern classic.
It was good. Yeah, not quite as good as National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. But
that was my next one.
That's the next one.
Give me all of that. I've seen it 100 times, and I'll definitely be watching it this holiday break.
Yeah.
Okay, what about Love Actually?
No, thank you. Never seen it, so.
Oh man, you got to go see Love Actually.
Yeah.
Okay, Die Hard.
It's a rom-com.
It's a rom-com, but it's a classic, yeah.
Oh, I don't mind a good rom-com, but I don't rom-com holiday.
It's a star-studded classic 2003 Christmas movie. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. How about Die Hard?
Give me some. Although
some.
I don't know how the hell we've managed. It kind of like crept up on us. How we managed to have like violent holiday movies become a thing. Kind of like, because Die Hard was what, 20, 30 years ago? At least the original one.
Okay.
And somehow over a span of 20 or 30 years, you can now expect every year there's like multiple R-rated violent, they're not even action movies. They're just like, oh, it's the holiday season, violence. Let's go see violence in the theater, like Bad Santa, that wasn't quite as violent. But like, there's something about maybe just the shiny veneer of the holidays that people are like, you know what, I've had too much hot chocolate, too much eggnog, too much holiday cheer, too much caroling. Let's go see something with guns and explosions.
Yeah. All right. Well, how about Home Alone?
It's a great movie.
How about Home Alone?
There's some
Actually,
violence.
that was a step in that violence, right?
Yeah.
Poor Joe Pesci. It's just like torture. Although he deserved it. But yeah, give me some.
All right. Final one is doing this exact same thing again next year.
Give me some.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh,
let's go.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, thank you so much. We've got a couple more minutes left for questions. So I'm going to throw a couple that have been kind of sitting in the chat for a little bit. Jim, we actually got the rest of your questions, and I'll pass this over to Linden, and we'll be able to
thank you, Jim.
respond to you after this. This one is from Lars. Will an integration with decentralized services like Mastadon be possible?
Shoot, we've looked at Mastodon a number of times. I think maybe mistakenly as an alternative, like, oh, should we have Mastodon because we think Twitter is kind of on its way out or about to hit rock bottom. We've never quite gotten there just from how many people are on Mastodon, how much are people using it. But Lars, if you think otherwise, or you think there's a group of folks, especially people that are trying to build this idea of community around their business online, whatever that business may be, we can be convinced otherwise. It's one of those things where we actually rely on a lot of the third-party services on IFT, build those integrations themselves. And then we have a budget internally for building services that we think really need to be on the platform. But for one reason or another, we're not on that roadmap for that third-party service to build it on IFT. So we can certainly slot it in, but right now we're really focused on some of those services that help people build a community around their business. And it just has felt like there's not that critical mass on Mastodon yet. Although, what do I know, right? Like if you're a big user of it and you've got a big community, convince us otherwise. And we're always going to be listening and willing to change our mind.
Yep. And Lars, I know people are using IFT's webhook service to automate some stuff within Mastodon already. So that we don't have a native service yet, but you can still use IFT to automate stuff with our webhook service. And here's another question from Sailor Mikey. Will you have support for HTTP responses in the webhook service?
Yeah, so I think with HTTP responses, maybe I need a little bit of extra info on what you're trying to accomplish there, because I could see the usefulness of that in a couple ways. One of those ways could be doing something based on a failure. Say, an API call fails, you get some kind of 500 or some kind of HTTP error code back. Doing something with that, like after running an action. But the other way in which I could see some kind of HTTP response being useful is in a query. So the webhook service could do something depending on that HTTP response. Now, the other thing I could see is if in that query or the trigger, if you wanted the HTTP response code, the numerical kind of 3-digit code, that could be a really interesting ingredient. Although there's probably only a handful of codes that would actually work. So right now, if you send in a 500 HTTP response, we treat that, that's an error. 500 is kind of like the worst error you could get in an HTTP response. So yeah, hopefully I'm parsing this question in the right way, but if not, happy to kind of answer it offline for you, Mikey.
Yeah. And feel free, Mikey, if we didn't correctly understand it, just send an email to marketing@if.com and we'll respond. So the last question we're going to do today, and this goes back to different movies, and if it's a gimme, gimme, or no thank you, this is from Rodrigo. And what about The Family Man? I don't even know what Rodrigo's talking about.
Is that Seth Rogen? Maybe?
The Family Man? This is, it might need to
who has access to the internet and Google?
Yeah.
Let's see what's going on here.
Or is that, I could also see The Family Man. That sounds like it could be really violent.
I think, is that Nick?
That's Nicolas Cage, I believe. Yeah.
A 2000 era comedy romance with Nick Cage.
Okay. With Nicolas Cage. Wow. That's a real throw me for a loop kind of thing. I'm going to have to check that out.
Yeah. I'm a gimme, gimme. Anything with Nick Cage from the mid 2000s. You know?
I'll have to check that out, Rodrigo. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Linden, we want to say thank you for joining us today. This was a lot of fun. We're excited that you've already agreed to do it next year. I'll be sending that calendar invite here shortly. We do this thing at the end of every live stream. We give away 1 free year of IF Pro Plus to one of our question writers to the audience. So we're going to put you on the spot and ask that you pick the winner for today's Pro Plus giveaway.
Let me see. I'm going to just throw out some people that have asked questions. So there's our friend Nick. There's Lars. Jim has already got a Pro Plus account. He won a couple months ago. There's a guy named Shubham. And as we're going to go through, and then Sailor Mikey was the last one. So, yep, Dennis has already won. He's on here, and then Rodrigo. Do you just want to choose, or should we choose?
Did I miss? I'm going to choose.
Yeah, you're going to choose.
No, you guys choose. You know who you've given it to before.
Yeah, that is true.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna choose Sailor Mikey. You were very active in the chat today. Thank you so much for asking those questions. Really appreciate you. And yeah, so feel free to email us at marketing@if.com, and then we'll give you a 1 free year of Pro Plus.
Awesome, Sailor Mikey. Thanks, Linden, again, and yeah, thanks everybody, and we'll see you. I believe our next live stream is in the new year. That is, I believe January the 12th, which is a Friday. We're going to be joining the CEO and founder of NewLink, which is a social media management platform. So there should be some really, really exciting stuff there. So we'll see you all in the new year.
Yeah.
Cool. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Happy New Year.
Thanks, everybody.